The Kansas State Wildcats are headed back to the Elite Eight for the first time since 2018 after a heroic, thrilling, all-time great Sweet 16 win over the Michigan State Spartans. We are the Sports on 580 crew. I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski. That's Fulton Caster. No, that's Dan Lucero. That's Fulton Caster over there. And we appreciate you stopping by to talk all about this big Wildcats win, 98-93 in overtime over Michigan State. Markquis Nowell setting an NCAA tournament record with 19 assists in the game, a couple of 20-point performances from both Nowell and from Johnson. Drama on both sides, some big performances from Michigan State as well. Dan, I'll pass this one off to you first here because you have spent so much time embedded with the Kansas State program over the course of the year. Just instant thoughts, instant reaction to what was an all-time performance. And apparently, by the way, K-State just loves playing dramatic games in the Sweet 16. Hello to Xavier. Apparently, that's just K-State's thing as a program. But what's the first thing that pops out to you about this win for K-State?
That it's an all-time great NCAA tournament game, and I'm not being hyperbolic, I don't think, when I say that this is one that we'll remember as an all-time great. I mean, I'm hard-pressed to think of too many that can top it for drama, for toughness, for shot-making, for storylines. Oh, my God, the storylines. A word I've used a lot in relation to Kansas State basketball this year has been cinematic, in that so many of the things that have happened and so many of the things that have gone right and gone well for this program this year have felt like you're watching a movie, something out of the Hollywood script. The new coach, the players left behind, not a big group, just two guys back from a team that was a losing team. The belief that you could turn it around and make the NCAA tournament, and then to not only make the NCAA tournament, but spend the better part of the year in the top 25. And now here this program is back in a regional final for the first time in 5 years, not a place that you get to take for granted being in this modern era of Kansas State basketball. And it happens because your 5'0" point guard, the heart and soul, the one who stayed, fights through a sprained ankle to put up 20 points and an NCAA tournament record, 19 assists at Madison Square Garden in his hometown of New York City to win a dramatic overtime game against one of the great NCAA tournament programs and coaches of all time. Like, what are we talking about here? Who's writing this stuff? That's my first reaction, is that who is writing this script? It's a dream season, and it continues for Kansas State.
And I mean, you're certainly not being hyperbolic about that, Dan. I mean, everybody all over my Twitter feed, my wife and I talking about it just during the game. Like, this is one of the great NCAA tournament games that we will probably ever see. I mean, we get great games every March. We had so many good games during the first weekend, but just up and down from the very beginning of the game. This was a close contest. K-State made some big shots. I thought Michigan State showed a lot of resilience to get that game to overtime, to keep it close right down to the very end as well. But in the end, K-State made more big shots, and that's really the difference maker. And Fulton, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't continue the point Dan made about Markquis Nowell doing it in New York City, where he is from, Madison Square Garden, the Mecca, the most famous arena on earth. 20 points, including the game-ending reverse layup, because why not, to get those final 2 points to break the 20-point mark. But 19 assists in the game, an NCAA tournament record that had stood since 1987. We've had a lot of basketball and a lot of damn good players ever since then. This was not just an all-time great game, Fulton. This was one of the all-time great individual performances in a tournament game, certainly in the Sweet 16 round.
It really is, and I want to be surprised at what Markquis Nowell did tonight. I want to be shocked that he sat there, put up 20 points, put up a tournament record, 19 assists. But there's a level to me that isn't, because who this guy is. I mean, his Twitter handle is at Mr. New York City. Like, this is what he is. New York City, he treats it as his home. It is his home. It's where he's from. It's where he was born, bred, raised.
It's who he is.
Exactly. It's just so much integral to who he is. And he's talked about it all the time. He wants to be remembered as the greatest player to come out of that city that's had so much basketball history. I can't be that surprised that him playing in the Mecca, a place that means so much to him, that he sat here and put on, I mean, an absolute show. There are times we can describe a player putting on a performance, making it seem like an art form. What Markquis Nowell did tonight was like Picasso making a painting of how great it was. I mean, some of those assists were just downright absurd with the left hand, the right hand, off speed, fastball. I mean, on one of the most key crucial plays of the game, on his 18th assist of the night, it's a backdoor cut lob to Keontae Johnson on a rope, perfectly on the money. Just everything he did, and the fact that he did that on one ankle more than less, it is completely amazing. And you add in, I mean, just so many of the great plays that Markquis made, and it's a perfect way for him to make his mark in the NCAA tournament. They now obviously have one more game, at least one more game left. They're going to go to the Elite Eight and play one more game in Madison Square Garden. But Markquis Nowell, you knew, was going to have a truly highlight moment in this tournament, and more importantly, highlight moment at Madison Square Garden. And he did it with an NCAA tournament record 19 assists. And the thing is, his craziest play that might get replayed the most might not even be an assist. It's a falling away, spin around, one hand, chuck up three-pointer that I still, to this point, all this time later, I don't know how that shot went in. Because it was seriously a grab, I'm just going to turn and, throw up a ball up, and it banks it off the backboard, which I think encapsulates how nothing was going to stop Markquis Nowell from putting on a show tonight. Not a single thing was going to prevent him from entertaining everybody in his city, as he likes to say.
And what was so incredible about that play, too, was it was right after he hurt his ankle. He slips, he hurts his ankle, he has to go get it taped up. It was right after he came back in the game. And earlier on that play, if you remember, he's cutting along that far baseline, trying to get under the basket, doing what K-State does so often, what he does so often, cut downhill, draw in multiple defenders, and then dump it off to someone underneath the basket. Well, because of the bum ankle and the fact that he clearly was not sprinting at full speed because of it, I thought the timing got thrown off, and that's why the ball was knocked away. That's why he wasn't able to hand it off. I'm not sure who the big was. It might have been Tomlin, might have been Gasson. I don't remember specifically, but the ball was knocked away. I thought, oh man, this is an example of what K-State is going to have to compensate for because he doesn't quite have the same speed on that bum ankle. And then he goes and tracks down the ball anyway, turns around and hoists up a three-pointer off the glass and good. Like that, it just encapsulates what heroes in March Madness are, making these big plays, coming up in the big moments, making just magic happen, but also it encapsulates who that player is, right? And the player that Jerome Tang has helped craft into not just being, a great shooter or, someone who has high volatility that sometimes makes these crazy shots like he did last year, sometimes makes huge mistakes like he did at times last year, and has really helped him turn into one of the best point guards in the entire NCAA, certainly that's left in the NCAA tournament. I mean, that's a performance, that's a game we're not going to forget anytime soon. And outside of Nowell, Dan, what other parts of this game really stood out to you? I thought K-State, and it sounds weird that the game went to overtime and they gave up 93 points. I thought there were a few sequences, though, where they really bowed up defensively, made some key plays. Nowell, again, making a huge one at the end of the game. I thought Keontae was iffy shooting the ball, but he still ended up with the team high 22 points. That's still a pretty damn good game. What are some of the other things that really popped out to you outside of the history from Markquis?
That everybody had to play well, and everybody did play well. I mean, you look at Michigan State, it shot the crap out of the ball. 13 of 25 from behind the arc, 18 of 22 at the free throw line. They just wouldn't let Kansas State pull away. I think K-State's biggest lead was something like 9. And once they got up by 9, that was before Nowell got hurt early in the second half. Hauser immediately hit a 3 for the Spartans. Like, Michigan State has to be so annoying to play because they're so well coached. They do the little things right. They made 18 to 22 free throws. It felt for a while like they were shooting in the vicinity of 85% in the second half. They got quality shots. They got downhill and got a lot of easy offense late in the game and in the overtime. Michigan State deserves a ton of credit. Their guards are tough. A.J. Hogard and Tyson Walker. Akins hit some big shots. Hauser hit some big shots. Malik Hall was a matchup problem, had 13 and 8 off the bench. But of the 7 guys that played significant minutes for Kansas State, they all played really, really well. You had 6 in double figures. Ish Massoud and David Gasson in double figures off the bench. Desi Sills got into foul trouble. That was a problem for Kansas State. They dealt with some foul trouble. They really missed Desi Sills defensively out front and up top. But Cam Carter, 5 of 6 from the field, 12.6 boards. Naquan Tomlin, 11.7 boards. Gasson, I mentioned, didn't miss a shot, 11 points on 5 of 5 from the field, including a remarkable three-pointer early in the game that maybe served notice of what kind of silliness and what kind of absurdity we were going to see at points in this one. Keontae, you mentioned, 22 on 18 shots, maybe not his best offensive game. Obviously, we've talked about Nowell. But one time for Ish Massoud and the guts to hit big shots. You know, Nowell is the headliner. Obviously, he's Mr. New York City, but Ish Massoud was coming home too. And he's the other one who stayed. And I'm glad he's had some big moments for Kansas State this season and down the stretch. Hit a big 3 against Kentucky late in that game. Hits the fall away 2-pointer that gives Kansas State the 3-point lead in overtime. Well executed out of bounds play. Tough 15-foot fall away jumper, but the puppies are organized and he gets it off and he knocks it down. Ish with 15 off the bench on 5 of 8 shooting, knocked down 4 of 6 threes, including some parking lot threes in the second half and overtime. Awesome stuff from really the top 7 guys from Kansas State. We have talked so much about how important it is that K-State gets good production from their secondary sources. They get a third scorer. They get somebody else to help Nowell and Johnson carry the weight. Tonight, honestly, it was everybody.
It was everybody, and especially the thing that really stands out about the fact that all these role players is almost like derogatory for the kind of roles they played. I mean, these were huge roles that these guys played in this game today, and they did it largely without Desi Sills. Sills had a ton of foul trouble throughout the game. He fouls out with, just under 3.5 minutes to go in the game, was something of a non-factor, and he's played so well as of late, and I'm glad his college career doesn't have to end on a super soft 5th foul call late in regulation in this contest, and officiating is something else. It was inconsistent is the word I would use for the officiating in this game. But you had David Gasson step up. He had a big block at the end of the game. You had Tomlin who did his thing. But Ish Massoud, Dan, you brought it up, and one time for him. How about a second time for him too? Because he went 4 of 6 from 3-point range in this game. That was phenomenal. We know that he is a 3-point shooter, and it wasn't always wide open looks for him, but he kept knocking him down. But the biggest shot of the game, a fadeaway baseline 2 to extend a 1-point lead to 3 in the waning moments of the game. And he shot that with so much confidence. Even damn near the end of the season, we didn't see that kind of just consistent confidence out of Ish Massoud until lately. But he showed it there. K-State clearly trusted him. A guy who was in the doghouse, by the way, early on in the season. That was quite apparent. Teammates, coaches, they trust him in that clutch moment at the end of the game when K-State lucked out because Michigan State didn't know the ball had been tipped and didn't just rebound the ball cleanly. Massoud, next possession after the inbound, knocks down one of the biggest baskets of the game. It was a team effort, and Dan, you and I have talked about this so much on 580 Sports Talk, and Fulton, I know you on Mic'd Up as well. You need to have these extra guys step in. It can't only be superstars, but then again, it also certainly helps when your superstar is absolutely incredible, like Markquis Nowell was today. Fulton, now, how about you? What was the underrated part of this game you think that led to this K-State victory?
The biggest thing for me it's the mental fortitude of K-State in this game. If I were to tell you before this game ever tipped off, and I would be like, guys, Michigan State's going to make 13 threes tonight. They're going to shoot 52% from 3. I think most of us would go, man, I guess Michigan State's winning this game by like 7. Because usually if a team is getting barraged from outside, that not only just is the simple effect of points on the board, but there's a mental part to that as well of just those shots constantly going in. You feel like no matter what you do, I mean, on Joey Hauser on some of those threes, yes, he was wide open on some. There were others where you're putting a hand in his face and they're still, touching nothing but nylon. You're just like, you're throwing your hands. Tyson Walker near the end of regulation puts up a 3 with a hand in his face and catch that. You're just, what do you do at that point? And there could have been any moment for a team that is still at its root a bunch of transfers. This is their only season ever playing together. This is a head coach who has never been a head coach at the Division I level before. There are plenty of times where you could see where a team built like this would fold, and you would go, "It stinks, but I get it," because you wonder what they can withstand. K-State, man, they were up by 9 points. The Michigan State goes on a heck of a run. They are making some great plays at the end. K-State never blinked. They were like, all right, well, every time Michigan State made a shot, someone on K-State was just like, well, I guess we're going to go get a bucket now. Now, 90% of the time, it was Markquis Nowell either putting that bucket in the hole or facilitating an amazing pass. But it was just that idea and mindset of we are not going to be rattled by a team shooting hot. This is a Michigan State team that had not been shooting it well in their first 2 tournament games. They had been shooting horrendously from 3 for their first 2 tournament games. And you knew you'd have to imagine that they were going to end up figuring it out. And they figured it out this game, but K-State stayed with it. They got some 3-point help of their own by making 11 of their own threes. but everyone just stayed calm. Everyone was just a calm presence, because this is the type of game where if you have not been in these moments, the moment can get to you and you can kind of spiral a little bit and get caught up. None of these guys did it. There were, a litany of reasons where K-State could have unraveled and it would not have been that surprising, or would not have been that, something you cannot understand. But K-State didn't. And the mental fortitude of this team that they have showed all season is so impressive to withstand they took Michigan State's best punches.
Yep.
And they just hopped off the ropes and said, all right, let's keep going, man.
Yep. It was
Real
toughness.
Quick,
it was
guys,
resilience. Yeah.
I without peeking at the box score, how many turnovers for K-State tonight?
Well, I know it was 5 at the start of overtime because I looked over to my wife sitting next to me and my mouth just hung open. I said, 5? I couldn't believe they were +7 at the start of overtime. I can't remember if they had one in the extra session.
They did not. 5
incredible
turnovers
That's
for
insane.
Kansas State. They got 13 in their last 2 games. Markquis Nowell had 19 assists and 2 turnovers. What are we talking about? In the Mecca, point guard city, USA, 5'8", dicing up Tom Izzo, Mr. March, in an overtime game on one ankle. Man, what is this? What are we talking about? This is an all-time great NCAA tournament run this man is on. And if he gets this team to the Final Four, they're going to put him with the gods. Like, never mind the rafters. They'll build a statue of Markquis Nowell at Bramlage Coliseum.
I was thinking when there was some talk after the win over Kentucky over the weekend, and I saw some K-State fans on Twitter, and understandably, excited about the moment. Dang, we should think about putting Markquis Nowell in the rafters. And I thought, he's been damn good this year, but I don't know if I'd go that far. I've changed my tune. Why not? Celebrate your best players, celebrate your best moments. Go for it. He set an NCAA tournament record. He's having an all-time great run for your program. Sure, put him in the rafters. Why not? Put the whole team up there if they get to the Final Four. Absolutely. Why not? Celebrate the good moments while you have them. That Eric Musselman, his team got their butts kicked on Thursday night. Take off your shirt while you can, man, and enjoy those moments while you can, because life and sports are fleeting. So before we get too existential, let's get some final thoughts here. We're obviously going to talk all about this game, preview the Elite Eight, no matter who that game is against, either FAU or Tennessee, coming up on both Mic'd Up and on 580 Sports Talk coming up on Friday. But first, Dan, let's get a final thought, a final word on just an all-time great tournament game and an all-time great tournament performance by K-State.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I'm so happy for Markquis Nowell and Ish Massoud. Nobody deserves this more than those guys do. They get the chance to show out in their backyard at Madison Square Garden. Has to be the coolest thing ever. And I just feel lucky I got to see that basketball game. I'm going to be talking about that one for a very long time.
Fulton, how about you? What's going to be the lasting image, the lasting thought about this win for K-State?
I have said this all year. I take no greater joy than watching Markquis Nowell play basketball. I am delighted that I get at least one more game of it. And this was one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in my time watching basketball. 19 assists at the Mecca in the Sweet 16. It cannot get any better than that. And people need to make sure they're truly appreciating watching Markquis Nowell play basketball, because at some point we're not going to get to see this anymore. And that's going to be a very sad day.
Yeah. Again, I meant it somewhat jokingly a moment ago, but it's true. Enjoy the good moments while you have them. And honestly, if you're a K-State fan, don't spend tonight thinking about, about Tennessee, about Florida Atlantic. No, just celebrate this. Just enjoy it. Just spend the next 48 hours doing nothing but celebrating one of the all-time great individual performances from Markquis Nowell in the NCAA tournament, and one of the best games of all time that we are ever going to see in the NCAA tournament. Again, we will be talking all about this coming up on both Mic'd Up with Fulton and Jake, as well as 580 Sports Talk with myself and Dan, coming up on Friday, noon to 3 and 3 to 6, respectively. Make sure you are following Sports on 580 on Twitter and that you are subscribed to the Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube account. We will be broadcasting the show, obviously, live on both the radio and on YouTube coming up on Friday. We'll have audio from the K-State players from MSG, audio from Jerome Tang as well, all coming up Friday here on 580 WIBW. So until then, for Fulton Caster, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dzwierzynski. This has been the Wildcats Instant Reaction post-game show following a historic win for K-State, 98-93 over Michigan State. We'll talk to you guys coming up